This is part 5 of my 5-part series, telling my story of how I got from planning on living on Villa Vie Residential Cruise Ship for 3.5 years to living in a van, which is where I am right now. The Royal Caribbean World Cruise I accidentally ended up on took me back to Miami, jumped on a train to my daughter's house about an hour and a half away, where I had my things in her attic that I would have been picking up for the cruise. Got back to her house and had to start over once I got to my daughter's, and I had gotten myself back in one piece. I could exhale, which was a sense of relaxation, but then everything sunk in. Everything that I had been through, the fact that I had come full circle from leaving the U.S. with such excitement and anticipation of what my life was going to be, and then being back in the U.S. knowing that was all gone, knowing that was all just ripped out from under me in such an unfortunate way. And now I had to regroup and start over. I came back to nothing. Although my condo unit was coming up to re-rent, financially I was no longer in a position to be able to even afford to live in my own condo. So that was out. So one of the things I had to do was re-rent my condo. I had to find a place for myself to live, which wasn't sure where that was going to be, but I needed my own place. I had doctor visits to catch up on. I was trying still to get my refund and my luggage back from Villa Vie. That had not happened yet, and this has been almost 2 months since I was terminated. So then I was also looking for an attorney, which was very high on the list because I was pretty sure at that point I was going to need one. And I was right. It was very difficult when I got back because from the time this happened, my brain just kind of froze. And I had a very difficult time making decisions. And so that was still continuing when I got home. And I had so many things that I needed to tend to. I needed to find a place to live. I needed to rent my unit. I needed to get an attorney. I was still trying to get my refund and my luggage back. But I ended up spending a lot of time just sitting still, kind of frozen in time, because my brain wasn't working the way it should have been. So another thing I needed to do was catch up on my doctor's visits and get to the doctor to see what kind of shape I was in physically, since that had been rather abused through all of these months of not having a healthy diet and eating gas station food and anything but a good healthy diet. My workout routine was way off, so I was concerned about my physical and mental health at that point. So I had to get to my doctor and do things like that. Get some referrals to specialists, so I had to take care of all of that. But if I could get kind of one thing done a day, that was probably good. I had to take it easy on myself because I was not in a good place. But I had to get these things done. So I still wanted to travel. You know, I hadn't given up my dream of traveling at all. I was ready to travel the world. So I definitely wasn't ready to sit in a condo or sit in one place and just, you know, have a Groundhog Day every day. So considering that I wanted to move, many years prior, I had looked into van life and thought that would be a great idea when I retired. And I was starting to plan things in that direction when I found the World Cruise. So the world cruise took priority. Van life went on the back burner. So now that really came back to life, that I was thinking, well, at least if I'm in a van, I can travel the U.S. I think I can make it very cost efficient and affordable. And seeing that I haven't traveled much at all, even in the U.S., it would be great to be in a van and travel around the U.S. So my number one priority was finding a van. And I'm looking at all these vans online, and I kind of had PTSD about pulling the trigger to make another big financial decision after what I had been through twice with both Life at Sea and Villa Vie, risking a lot of money and both of those turning out badly. I was afraid to make another huge mistake financially, and at this point, I didn't have the finances I had previously to risk. So looking at vans, and I would see something that looked good online, but I couldn't get myself to take the next step because of the shock and fear of making a bad decision. And then I would decide the next day, okay, it's probably good, I should probably go for it, and then I would go and it would be gone. And then I'd be mad because I'm thinking, oh, well, it probably was good if it sold in 2 days. So I'm going through this over and over again. Finally ended up finding something in Fort Lauderdale, which was close enough to drive to. Not exactly what I was looking for, but it was going to serve the purpose. So when I do all my van tours, I'll give you a tour of the van that I'm in now, and introduce you to Herschel, my home. So anyway, I did end up pulling the trigger on the van, realizing, well, I just have to jump at this point because I need to do something. So got the van, then that moved into, now I've got to get the van set up, which of course was crawling back into my daughter's attic. This is about the 5th time I've done this now. And this is an attic in Florida where, you have to time it right because in the middle of the afternoon it could be 120 degrees up there. And I put all my stuff in the back of her attic, so I didn't want to use up their common space. So my stuff in her attic means I got to go up a rickety ladder, and then I have to army crawl probably 20 feet to the other side of the attic under rafters, sweating profusely, and then getting to a point where I could go through my probably 10 bags of things that I had repacked about 5 times already. So it meant going through all those things again and pulling out what I was going to need now for van life. So that's one thing I was working on. And just to explain my situation with my condo and why I couldn't afford to live in it anymore, the plan I had had all along while getting closer and planning for my retirement is I had a second condo that I wasn't living in, that I was renting. I was going to sell that condo, which would have paid off the mortgage for the condo I was living in. So I could have lived in the condo for just the HOA fees plus taxes and insurance. And I had my additional condo sitting job in Florida, which would have been part-time and made up the difference for what I needed in my budget. So that was my plan before I ever heard about a world cruise. Now, when I first heard about Life at Sea, the original plan for Life at Sea was you had to pay for the whole 3 years up front. So I put the other condo up for sale because that was going to be my money to pay for a majority of the 3 years. The condo actually sold immediately, but then by the time Life at Sea canceled, that condo was already sold and under contract. So I couldn't reverse that decision, although that would have been a great condo to have when I got back in town after Villa Vie, because it was paid for and had very cheap HOA fees. But that was gone. So after giving Life at Sea a chunk of that money from the sale of the condo, they switched their plan so you could go on a every 6 months make a payment. So I had made a couple of payments, so a big chunk of that money was there, which they still have. Some of that money was given to Villa Vie as a deposit, so a lot of that money was tied up. So the end result is, number one, I don't have the money anymore to pay off my mortgage. And then, because I wasn't living there in Florida for more than 6 months out of the year, I lost my homestead exemption for the taxes. So my taxes more than doubled, which made a huge increase in the mortgage payment. So between those two factors, my income was less than what I needed to pay in my unit to stay there. Now, another project I had to work on was trying to get my promised refund back from Villa Vie. Been a couple of months, many emails later, and luggage. I still had 2 big pieces of luggage on the ship. So finally, shortly after I got back, which was a little more than 2 months after the termination, one of my payments, payment for segment 1, which was a big payment, segment 1 in full, was on a credit card. And so I got an email that said, we've refunded you in full, and they showed me the credit they had given back to my credit card, which was substantially short of the full payment I made, with no explanation whatsoever. Where's the rest of the payment? What happened to the rest of the money? There was also no refund for all of my additional expenses in Belfast. There was no refund or no mention of the deposit I put on the entire 3.5-year cruise. And there was another small deposit. I had just made a very small deposit on segment 2, and that was refunded also. So at this point, I'm going to say about maybe 30% of my money was refunded. So of course I'm responding by email, what about the rest of the money? And as was standard practice, not getting any responses. So asking again and again and again, I need the deposit, I need the rest of the credit card payment. Didn't get any response. So the credit card payment, I could file a dispute with my credit card, which I did. And the credit card company, over a period of time, did refund the rest of that payment. But still none of the expenses in Belfast, my deposit for the whole cruise, and my luggage being returned had not been addressed. Although when I did get the email for here's your, quote, full refund, which was a partial credit card refund, there was also a note that Mike added to that said, since we've refunded your money, we are no longer responsible for your personal possessions on the ship. So that was somewhat humorous at the time, but scared me. I thought, what are they going to throw them overboard? And I knew, of course, they're still responsible. But he decided they weren't responsible. So at that point, I realized it's time to get an attorney because this is where they're going to end this whole process. Okay, the process of finding an attorney. I had previously, through my travels, emailed probably dozens of attorneys. I was looking in Florida first, thinking that would be the most convenient because I live there. Emailed a lot of attorneys, either, it wasn't going to be enough money for them, or, it wasn't up their alley. And then I knew that I had to get a maritime attorney who works with cruise ships, needed to have that specialty. I, according to my contract, could get an attorney either in Florida or Delaware. Florida, I was striking out, so I decided to pursue something in Delaware. And in an attempt to find an attorney, I went to social media because I tried everything else and I wasn't getting anywhere. So I had been a YouTube subscriber for a long time. So I thought, well, I'm going to start on YouTube because I've always watched all these, cruising videos I subscribe to and watch on YouTube. So I searched every video that had mentioned Villa Vie Odyssey or Villa Vie Residences, and about 10 videos came up. So I put just a short little paragraph on all of those videos saying, this is who I am. I'm the woman who had their contract terminated by this company, and I'm in need of an attorney. So, if anyone can help me out there, I need a maritime attorney, and, a short little paragraph of what I needed. So I put that on about 10 YouTube channels and got a couple of responses back, but one response back that I got back was a very heartfelt message from Backroads Tourist channel that said, I'm really sorry to hear about your situation, and would you be interested in doing an interview? And I said, well, sure. I'm trying to get the word out and trying to get an attorney. So we did a phone interview. He did ask if I wanted to do a video interview, but at that point I was such a mess physically. I did not want to be seen. I wanted to crawl into a cave and hide. So definitely not be seen on public media. So he set up the interview on the phone. I guess it took a little over an hour, and then he published that, and that just kind of took off and went crazy. So Backroads Tourist, Jeff, thank you. You really got my story out there. Unfortunately, that progressed to where he was doing a lot of Villa Vie content, and Villa Vie did not like that. So they sent him a cease and desist letter and threatened him with a lawsuit if he continued with certain Villa Vie content. So that's why that is not showing on his channel anymore. It's not that he wouldn't like to do it, but yeah, they effectively shut that down. So I ended up getting a referral to a maritime attorney in Delaware. And at that time, the interview was on Backroads Tourist channel, me briefly telling my story. And so I contacted this attorney and said, to familiarize yourself with my case, you can go to Backroads Tourist. I said, in the evening, put your feet up. When you're going to have a cocktail or a beer at happy hour, watch I believe it was a 4-part series at that time with my story, and then let me know if you have any interest in taking my case. And he did. He did watch the videos, and he did take my case. So that was a huge relief. So I got my attorney lined up. Now, once I retained the attorney, probably 2 days later, I was notified that Kathy and Mike, who had been on the ship, wherever it was, overseas, were going to be flying back to Florida. And that's where I was. And a friend of mine was kind enough to say, you might want to let your attorney know that they're flying back to Florida. They can bring your luggage with them. So I was like, wow, that's a fabulous idea. So I quick contacted my attorney. He contacted Kathy and Mike, let them know if they bring my luggage back, it will substantially decrease the amount of damages that we'll be suing for in the lawsuit. So they agreed to bring the luggage back. A lot of last minute, rushing around. I had suitcases that were locked, needed, combinations and all that. So got it all taken care of. They did bring the suitcases back with them under the advice of my attorney, and got them to their house in Florida, and then did ship them to my daughter's house from their house in Florida. So I did get my 2 suitcases back. They were in good shape, no problem. So the attorney got that taken care of. Oh, and another fun fact is that after I got back my luggage, after I had retained the attorney, several days after that, I got the email from the Villa Vie accountant, who then all of a sudden decided this would be a good time to return my deposit. So at that time, that wasn't going to be good enough. So I told her I would forward that to my attorney, which we did not accept the deposit at that point, because now we're suing for damages that are substantially beyond the amount of the deposit. But how nice of them to offer that after I retained an attorney. So I ended up picking up my van in October of 2024, last year. Took it to my daughter's, got it all set up. I was not ready at that time, mentally, emotionally, to just go out and hit the road. I still felt incredibly unstable and unsure of myself. So for a little bit, I had it parked in my daughter's driveway and actually slept in it in my daughter's driveway for a few nights. And then for a few weeks following that, I slept just a few blocks away from her house in parking lots that I knew I could stay overnight in. Certain businesses allow you to, park in their parking lots overnight. So I stayed close to home. I was like a baby bird. I wasn't ready to fly too far from the nest yet, but I stayed close, and then I could come back there and do the things I still needed to adjust on the van during the day. So I stayed close, and also the van I bought had a year's warranty, but only if I take it to the location I bought it in Fort Lauderdale. So I didn't want to get too far. I wanted to make sure I could work all the bugs out, and anything that needed to be fixed, I could get fixed before I left, somewhere else in the country. And also it was cold everywhere else. So I'm in Florida. It's, coming up on winter time. So I thought, well, I'm going to stay in Florida for at least a couple of months and get my feet on the ground, get my bearings, readjust my brain, finish up all my doctor's appointments, had redhead skin, had a couple of Mohs surgeries I had to get done for skin cancer and things like that. So had to get all of that done. Also ended up looking into some therapy and some things that I needed to take care of for my mental state of mind. November and December, I stayed in Florida because also with Christmas coming up and the holidays, I wanted to be close to my family, my daughter and my grandkids, not knowing where I would be following years. So I stayed around there also to just keep myself in a comfort zone, so to speak, and stay close to the van dealership in case anything went wrong with the van. So tooled around Florida. I got the Florida State Park Pass, went and visited, I'm going to say at least 40 Florida state parks all over the state, which was actually very nice, very calming, healing for my soul to be in nature and to just go walk or kayak or bike ride somewhere in a beautiful natural state park. So it was kind of a form of therapy. Once I got through the holidays, I was ready to leave Florida, to fly far from the nest and leave Florida, me and Herschel, that's the name of my van, and venture out of Florida. So headed north. My plans were to head all the way up the East Coast, but then I realized I have to pay attention to weather. In Florida, you really don't. It's pretty much sunny the same every day, and you know when a hurricane's coming. So you don't ever need to look at the weather. Whatever it is, it'll be over in 5 minutes. But now I had to watch the weather. So the weather in North Carolina was bad, fires and storms. So I have been kind of zigzagging through the eastern side of the U.S., went up to Ohio to visit a lot of family members, I was born and raised in Ohio, and I still have part of my family there. Another family member in Michigan I went to visit. Now I'm going to see another friend for 4th of July to watch the fireworks and possibly do a little traveling with, a little caravanning in a couple of vans, and that could turn out to be a lot of fun. You spend every night in a parking lot. All the businesses, there's a string of them that do allow overnight parking, and I will find one of those and sleep overnight in my van in a parking lot. So I'm not a camper. Never have been a camper. This would be glamping kind of in my van here, but yeah, so not a camper. Pretty much just spend the night somewhere so I can go find a fun place the next afternoon. And I'm visiting tourist spots. I want to visit art shows. I'm seeing a lot of art shows and following those around the country. Amusement parks, big cities I've wanted to see, and then of course all the national parks. Really my goal is to spend as much time in nature as possible. It's a nice, safe, peaceful place to be. Thank you all for sticking with me to the end, if you've listened to this whole story. It's been good for me to tell my story. The way I was portrayed is not who I am at all. So I really wanted people to know who I am. And thank you to all of the people that have and continue to support me through this process. I'm not just getting justice for me at this point. Now I'm getting justice for all of us, for all of the people that have had their situations and that have their stories. This is for all of you. So thank you for your support, and I am going to continue until I do get justice. I'm working hard to learn how to do this video stuff, and it's a lot to learn. So I'm in Google and YouTube University, learning how to make videos, learning how to edit videos, learning some of the bells and whistles, learning how to navigate through YouTube, which is the whole animal in itself. So I've got lots of projects I'm working on. It has been good for me to tell my story, and I'm so appreciative of all of the people that have followed this and listened to this and are supporting me in my effort to get justice for this through my lawsuit. So that wraps up my 5-part series telling my story about how I started at Villa Vie and ended up living in a van. So after this, I will continue with videos about my van life, and I will be updating and continuing with information about Villa Vie. So both of these two areas I will continue with. I'm also going to be publishing my email address here. So if you have any information you'd like to send me, please do that. And thank you all so much for watching, and do follow the rest of my videos. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel so we can all, as a group, try to get justice for this situation.